I saw her slippers first. They were the kind of soft, fuzzy slippers you buy when you plan to stay. Not the cheap kind you throw in a weekend bag. These were placed neatly beside my side of the bed, the side I used to sleep on for years. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom that used to be ours, and felt something inside me go completely silent. Then I saw the phone charger on the nightstand. A different one, a different case, a different life. And the worst part wasn't even the proof that another woman was here. The worst part was how normal it looked, like the room had simply been waiting for her, like I had been a temporary placeholder in my own marriage. My name is Hannah. I'm 37 years old, and I am the wayward wife. That phrase used to sound dramatic to me, like something from an old movie, like someone else's story, someone reckless, someone selfish in a way I'd never be. But here I am, in a rented apartment that still smells like cardboard boxes and stale coffee, watching the man I was with since I was 16 move on, as if I never existed. People think the affair is the moment everything breaks. It isn't. The affair is usually just the match. The real break happens quietly, long before anyone notices. It happens in the space between two people who stop seeing each other. It happens when you're in the same house, and you feel alone anyway. It happens when you start asking yourself, is this it? Is this really my whole life? And if you don't say those words out loud, if you don't ask for help in the right way, you start reaching for relief in the wrong places. I'm not telling you this story to get sympathy. I've already learned sympathy has limits. People will listen right up until the part where you admit what you did. Then they decide you deserve whatever happens next. Maybe I do. But I'm telling it because I need to understand how I got here. How a woman with 2 kids, a dog, a stable home, and a husband who never raised his voice became someone capable of ruining her own life and then begging for it back. Because I'm standing in the aftermath now, and I don't know if there's any road back. If you met us 10 years ago, you would have thought we were the boring kind of happy. My husband, Ethan, is 38. We met in high school. I was 16. He was 17. He was my first boyfriend, my first kiss, my first everything. When you grow up with someone like that, you don't just build a relationship. You build a shared language, inside jokes that no one else understands, traditions that seem silly to outsiders but feel sacred to you. We got married young. We built the life you're supposed to build. 2 kids. A dog that sheds like it's his full-time job. A house with a backyard that Ethan mowed every Saturday like it was a ritual. Cars that ran, bills that got paid, vacations once or twice a year. On the outside, it looked like we had won, and in a lot of ways, we had. But there was a quiet problem I never knew how to name without feeling guilty. After our second child, something in me started dimming. Not all at once. More like a slow fade that I pretended I didn't notice because everything else looked fine. It hit hardest in winter at first. A few weeks where I'd feel heavy, like I was moving through syrup. Then spring would come and I'd be okay again. I told myself it was normal. Everyone gets tired. Everyone gets overwhelmed. Everyone has phases. But a few years ago, those phases stopped leaving. The heaviness stayed. I'd be washing dishes after dinner, staring at the same kitchen counter I'd stared at for years, and a thought would drop into my mind so calmly it scared me. Is this all there is? Work, kids, laundry, groceries, the same arguments about whose turn it was to do bedtime, a vacation that was mostly just parenting in a different location, and then back to work again. And the worst part is, I didn't hate my life. That's what made me feel insane. I had a good husband, good kids. We weren't struggling the way other families struggled. So if I felt unhappy, what did that make me? Ungrateful, broken, spoiled. Those were the words I used in my head. So I didn't tell Ethan, not properly. I gave him hints. I was quieter, I was more irritable, I withdrew. I would say I was tired, I would say I was stressed, I would say nothing at all and hope he'd understand what I couldn't explain. He didn't, and I didn't blame him. How could he fix something I couldn't even name? Then we started trying for a 3rd child. We had wanted one for years, but it never happened. Month after month, nothing. 4 years of hoping and disappointment that we didn't talk about enough because talking made it real. When you're trying for a baby, intimacy can stop feeling like intimacy. It can start feeling like a chore with a calendar. Before that, our physical connection had been inconsistent. We were tired. We were parents. Life was full. Then suddenly it was constant again, but not always in the way I needed. It was focused on a goal. It was structured. It was one more responsibility in a life already packed with responsibilities. I started feeling like my entire existence was functional. Wife, mother, employee, scheduler, cleaner, planner. Nothing in my life felt like it belonged to Hannah anymore. And that's where the danger started. Because when you feel like you've disappeared, you start craving anything that makes you feel seen. It happened at work. There was a colleague. I'm not going to use his real name. It doesn't matter. What matters is how it began, because that's what scares me the most. It began innocently. He was married. He wasn't my type. He didn't walk into the room like some movie character who turns your head. He was just there, friendly, observant. The kind of person who asked how you were and then actually waited for the answer. At first it felt harmless, like having a work friend, someone to laugh with, someone who noticed the small things. Then he started paying attention to me in a way that felt different. He would tell me I looked nice on days I hadn't even tried. He would remember details I mentioned in passing. He would say things that made me feel like I wasn't just a mom and a wife and a worker, like I was still a woman. And I want to be clear here, because I'm not trying to rewrite my own responsibility. He didn't force anything. I leaned in. I let myself float toward the attention because it felt like air after years of holding my breath. Over time, it turned into an emotional connection. Texts that started as jokes and became something I checked too often. Conversations that made me feel alive again. It was like I had been underwater for years, and someone finally handed me oxygen. Then it became physical. I'm not going to dress it up. I'm not going to describe it like something romantic. It was an affair. It was betrayal. It was me choosing something that made me feel good in the moment over the people who deserved my loyalty. In those moments, I didn't think about consequences the way a mature person should. I didn't think about Ethan coming home and kissing me hello while I carried someone else's secret. I didn't think about my kids running into my arms. I didn't think about what it would look like when the truth hit the light. I told myself lies instead. It's just an escape. It doesn't change what I have at home. I can stop anytime. I deserve to feel happy. And the most dangerous lie of all, no one will ever know. That was the one that made me reckless. Because once you believe no one will ever know, you start doing things you never thought you'd do. You start taking risks. You start building a second self. There's the version of you who packs lunches and helps with homework and talks about weekend plans. And there's the version of you who deletes messages and watches the clock and thinks about someone who isn't your spouse. Living as two people at once does something to your mind. It makes you arrogant in a quiet way. It makes you feel untouchable until you're not. He got caught first. His wife found out. I don't know exactly how. I never asked because by the time it happened, it didn't matter. What mattered was the speed at which my life turned into ash. It didn't stay private. She told people. Colleagues found out. Friends found out. And then it reached my family. Like a wildfire I couldn't outrun. In a matter of days, I went from being a normal person with a normal life to being a cautionary tale. And then Ethan found out. I'll never forget his face. Not anger at first, not screaming, not the movie version. It was confusion, like he was trying to fit the information into the version of me he knew, and his mind couldn't make it work. Then the pain hit him, and the pain turned into something sharper. There were nights of crying, screaming, name-calling, questions he asked me that I couldn't answer without hating myself. How long? Was it real? Did you love him? Did you ever love me? I said I was sorry so many times the words started to feel like noise, like a broken record that couldn't fix what it had shattered. And I did feel sorry. I still do. But sorry isn't a time machine. It doesn't undo anything. It doesn't put the trust back in the exact place it used to sit. After those first weeks, something happened that I didn't deserve. Ethan said he wanted to try. He wanted to stay a family. He wanted to see if we could rebuild. When he said that, I should have fallen to my knees in gratitude. I should have clung to the chance like it was a lifeline. And part of me did. But another part of me didn't know how to come back. Because here's the truth I'm ashamed to say out loud. The affair didn't just break my marriage, it rewired my brain. It set my nervous system on fire for so long that normal life started feeling like silence. And silence started feeling like suffocation. We did everything people tell you to do: couples counseling, individual therapy, boundaries. I changed departments at work. We started doing weekly dates. We took days off without the kids. We tried to reconnect physically and emotionally. Ethan worked through his emotions the way he approached everything else in life, with effort, with seriousness, with commitment. He read articles. He asked questions. He showed up. He was hurting, but he was trying. And for a while, I thought we might make it. He started getting better after a few months. You could see it in the way he breathed, in the way he stopped flinching when my phone buzzed, in the way he laughed a little more freely with the kids. It was like he decided that if he was going to forgive me, he was going to do it completely. But the strangest thing happened. As Ethan started recovering, I started unraveling. Because I couldn't let go of the affair the way I was supposed to. Not because I wanted the other man, not in a real, build a life kind of way, but because the feeling was like a drug my body remembered. Being wanted, being pursued, being the center of someone's attention. I tried to replace that feeling with what I had at home, but home felt like responsibility. Home felt like a spreadsheet, like two adults managing a life, and that's the moment that should have terrified me. Because imagine being the person who caused the explosion, and then being the person who complains the ashes aren't warm enough. That was me. 7 or 8 months after everything blew up, I started feeling trapped, suffocating. I would watch Ethan do normal husband things, and instead of gratitude, I would feel irritation. He would ask how my day was, and it would feel like pressure. He would plan a date night, and it would feel like obligation. He would look at me with hope in his eyes, and it would feel like guilt. Everything he did felt wrong, not because he was doing it wrong, but because I was no longer able to receive it without tasting what I had done. My therapist listened to me describe the feeling week after week until she finally said something I didn't want to hear. She suggested I move out. Not because Ethan deserved it, not because I deserved freedom, but because I was stuck in a loop of shame and restlessness that I was poisoning everyone with, including the kids. I told myself it would just be a separation, just some space, just a reset. But the more we fought, the more I felt cornered by my own choices, the more I started believing the only way to stop feeling guilty was to end the thing I had damaged. One night, in the middle of another argument that started over something small and turned into everything, the words came out of my mouth. Let's divorce. I expected Ethan to react, to beg, to bargain, to panic. He didn't. He just looked at me like something inside him shut off, and he said, okay. Then he walked out of the room. A week later, he had paperwork ready. He told me I needed to find another place within 30 days. It happened so fast I felt dizzy. It was like he had been holding himself together with tape, and the moment I said divorce, he finally stopped trying to be the one carrying it. I moved out. I told myself it was temporary, even as I carried boxes into an apartment that didn't feel like mine. I told myself Ethan would miss me, that he would realize we were worth fighting for. Then I found out he was dating, not months later, not after we had time to breathe, almost immediately. And something inside me cracked open, because suddenly, for the first time, I felt the full weight of what I had done, not as an idea, not as a moral lesson, but as a living reality. Another woman in my bedroom, another woman around my kids, another woman existing in the place I thought I could always return to, no matter what mess I made. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I cried until my eyes looked bruised. And I hate admitting this, but I need to be honest if I'm going to understand myself. I didn't fully realize the size of my mistake until I realized he might actually replace me. Not just legally, emotionally. And that truth makes me feel disgusting, because it reveals something about my mind that I don't want to see. Part of my grief wasn't about Ethan's pain. It was about my loss. It was about control slipping away. It was about consequences finally becoming permanent. I reached out to him. I asked to talk. When he agreed, I felt hope spike in my chest like a cruel joke. We sat across from each other and I told him I was sorry. I told him I missed him. I told him I was confused and scared and I didn't understand how I got here. I told him it hurt to think about him with someone else. He listened without reacting much. And when I finished, he said 2 words that felt like a closed door. Okay. Fine. That was it. No anger, no tears, no fight, just indifference. And if you've ever been loved deeply by someone who knows you, you know indifference is worse than rage. Rage means they still feel you. Indifference means they've already started living without you. In the days after that conversation, I couldn't stop replaying everything. My mind kept trying to rewrite the timeline, as if I could find the moment where I could have made a different choice. If I had communicated better, if I had gotten help earlier, if I had ended the affair sooner, if I had tried harder to reconnect, if I had never said divorce, if I had never done any of it. And now I'm sitting here, asking a question that sounds pathetic, but feels like the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. Is there any hope left? Or did I already spend it? After that conversation, something shifted inside me. Not in a dramatic way. There was no breakdown moment where I collapsed on the floor and finally understood everything. It was quieter than that, more dangerous. It was the slow realization that the version of my life I thought I could always return to was gone. Not paused. Gone. Ethan stopped checking in the way he used to. His messages became shorter, practical, about the kids, about schedules, about logistics. No warmth, no bitterness either. Just efficiency. And that terrified me more than anger ever could, because anger still means attachment. Efficiency means closure. I started noticing things I hadn't noticed before. Small things that suddenly felt enormous. He no longer asked how my therapy sessions were going. He didn't ask if I was eating. He didn't ask if I was okay. He had stopped trying to save me from myself, and I couldn't blame him. The apartment I moved into felt temporary at first. I kept telling myself that. I didn't hang pictures. I didn't unpack everything. I lived out of boxes longer than I needed to. Like if I didn't fully settle, this wouldn't be real. But reality doesn't care about denial. Nights were the worst. When the kids weren't with me, the silence felt aggressive. I would sit on the couch scrolling through my phone, not even looking at anything, just trying to outrun my own thoughts. And my thoughts were cruel. They reminded me of every warning sign I ignored. Every moment Ethan tried to connect and I brushed him off. Every time he chose stability and I mistook it for boredom. I started asking myself questions that didn't have clean answers. Did I ever really want the affair partner? Or did I just want to feel alive? Did I leave my marriage because it was broken? Or because I broke it and couldn't stand living inside the damage? Was I depressed in the marriage? Or was I depressed in myself? Those questions didn't bring clarity. They brought panic. Because the more honest I got, the more I realized something unbearable. I didn't leave because I was sure. I left because I was confused and ashamed and tired of feeling like the villain in my own home. And now, outside the marriage, I wasn't free. I was worse. My depression deepened in a way I hadn't experienced before. It wasn't seasonal anymore. It wasn't situational. It was constant, heavy, paralyzing. I struggled to get out of bed. Work felt impossible. Simple tasks felt overwhelming. I would stare at my email inbox and feel like my brain was buffering. And through all of it, One image kept replaying in my mind, Ethan with her. Not in a dramatic way, not like a movie scene, just ordinary moments. Her sitting on the couch, her laughing at something he said, her sleeping in the bed I once shared with him. I hated myself for the jealousy, because I had no moral high ground. I was the one who introduced betrayal into our marriage. I was the one who said the word divorce. And yet, knowing that didn't make the pain smaller. It made it more complicated. I started replaying our reconciliation period in my head, searching for proof that I had tried hard enough. We went to counseling. We went on dates. We tried to be intimate again. But when I was honest with myself, I saw the truth I had been avoiding. I was physically present, but emotionally unavailable. I was waiting to feel something instead of choosing to build it. And love doesn't work like that, especially after damage. Ethan was choosing every day to stay, to forgive, to rebuild. I was waiting to magically feel like the woman I used to be before I broke everything. And when that feeling didn't come, I panicked. I confused discomfort with certainty. I confused guilt with incompatibility. I confused restlessness with truth. By the time I said, "Let's divorce," Ethan had already been carrying the emotional weight of the marriage alone for months. I just hadn't noticed. When I found out he was dating, my first reaction wasn't maturity. It was shock. How could he move on so fast? How could he replace me? How could he bring another woman into the life we built together? And then, slowly, painfully, another realization followed. He didn't move on fast. He moved on after trying. He moved on after forgiving. He moved on after I told him, with my words and my actions, that I didn't want him the way he wanted me. I wasn't replaced. I was released. That distinction hurt more than anything, because it meant this wasn't something happening to me. It was something I set in motion. I started questioning my own motives in ways that made me deeply uncomfortable. Did I want Ethan back because I loved him? Or because seeing him happy without me shattered the illusion that I was still central to his life? Did I miss him? Or did I miss the safety of being chosen? Those are not flattering questions, but they're honest ones. When I reached out to him and told him how I felt, part of me hoped he would fight for me again, that he would remind me of who we used to be, that he would pull me back into the familiar shape of our marriage. Instead, he gave me exactly what I had asked for months earlier: distance, calm, finality. And in that calm, I felt something I hadn't expected: regret without bargaining power. There was no crisis to fix, no argument to win, no affair fog to hide behind, just consequences. I started noticing how the kids were adjusting, how they talked about their dad's house, how casually they mentioned her, not with excitement, not with resentment, just acceptance. Kids adapt faster than adults. That scared me too, because it meant life was moving forward without waiting for me to catch up. I asked myself over and over the question that brought me here in the first place: can this be saved? And the more I sat with it, the more I realized something that no one wants to hear when they're in pain. Hope doesn't work on demand. You don't get to break something, walk away, and then reclaim it the moment you realize it mattered. Reconciliation isn't about wanting it badly enough. It's about timing, trust, and whether the other person still has space for you in their life. And Ethan might not. That doesn't make him cruel. It makes him human. I'm still sitting in the aftermath now, still in therapy, still trying to untangle depression from regret, loneliness from accountability. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if there's a path back to the marriage I destroyed. What I do know is this: some mistakes don't announce their weight until it's too late to set them down. And sometimes the hardest part isn't losing the person you love. It's realizing you were given chances you didn't recognize until they were gone. If there's any lesson in my story, it isn't about affairs or divorce or who moved on first. It's about silence, about what happens when you don't speak your pain early, when you let loneliness rot quietly, when you chase relief instead of healing. Because by the time you finally understand what you've lost, the other person may already be learning how to live without you. And that realization, that's the part I don't know how to come back from.